Hello, amigas, and welcome to Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast. I am so excited to have once more Dr. Damary Bonilla here on Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast. Amigas, this is the second time around, but let me say something. So much happens within 1 year, ¿verdad?
Yeah.
¿Verdad, amiga?
Sí.
So I'm excited to have her here once again. And just as a refresher, amigas out there, Dr. Damary is a C Executive Suite author, board member, and thought leader with 18 years of experiencing harmonizing DEI, leadership development, education, and civic engagement to influence change and equity for all. Oh my God, I'm just so excited because she wrote a new book and we're going to dive really deep in this book. But before that, welcome, amiga. How are you?
Gracias, amiga. I'm good and I'm better hanging out with you. I see your smile and it just calms me down. And we always have a good time together, genuine conversation. And, I follow everything that you do and I appreciate the platform you've created for me and for other amigas to be able to share the amazing work they're doing so that we can inspire and encourage each other. So thanks for having me.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to have you here once again. And of course, for those amigas that haven't listened to the prior podcast, you should, number one. Number two, we're going to start from our last conversation because at that time, you were running for a seat in a governmental position. And so Why don't you tell us what has happened since then? Because I know there's so much going on.
So you're absolutely right with the kickoff that so much happens in a year. And so when I was here before, I was running for re-election for school board, and I actually shared a couple of political nuances that had just emerged, right? It was like a tell-all. We had a good time with that. And so unfortunately, I lost my re-election based on what happened with the union and their lack of support and the challenges that I talked about on the previous podcast, which by the way is on my website. And a side fun thing was that my son was on my website because he likes to check what's new, and he saw the podcast and he goes, "Mom, SHIT is in there." And I was like, "Oh, it's in a professional setting, so you can say it when you say your podcast, but only then."
I know. And sometimes it could be a little like, what is it like? Oh, that's a bad word.
Right. So that was fun. I said I have to tell Jackie when we hang out again. But I did close out my 4-year term on the school board in early December of last year. But of course, as you know, and many of our amigas that are going to tune in, we do not need the title. We do not need the position. The work has to get done, right? And we're in it for equity. We're in it to give a voice to the voiceless. We're in it for representation because representation matters is not just a term to us. It really is our livelihood. And those are some of the comments that I made in my last meeting. I said, you don't get rid of me that quickly. And just FYI, the school board, getting on the school board didn't make me and it's not going to break me. And so we have to adopt the mentality that we have the opportunity to influence at all levels of society through our effort, through waking up in the morning, through the passion that we have for advocacy, for supporting others, for bringing attention to the issues that impact our community, and that it's okay if I have the title and it's okay if I don't.
Right, exactly. Well, thank you for saying that because I feel that sometimes a lot of amigas out there, they get so disillusioned when something doesn't happen their way. And I always say, you know what? It's not a rejection. It's just a redirection.
Yeah, I love that.
And so you have a redirection. And I know that we're here for that purpose of your redirection. So, amiga, you have this lovely book. For those of you out there listening to this podcast, Dr. Damary Bonilla-Rodriguez wrote a lovely book called Modern Marianismo, Its Relevance and Connection to Imposter Syndrome and Perfection. And so our podcast is on YouTube, so they'll be able to see this so they can purchase it. But let's get into it because I know after what happened with the board, you just completely dove deeply into writing this book. And I want to ask you, how did it come about? How did this book come about and roll into your laps, if you will?
Yeah. So first, you're absolutely right about the redirection. I love how you worded that because I was swamped with meetings and events and, just all of the work that it took to be on the school board, to be the first Hispanic elected, to be the voice for, almost 70% of students of color that are in the district. And that took so much of me. My husband always said, it's like a full-time job, right? Because I did it above and beyond and still didn't do as much as I wanted to do, if you can imagine that. And this book then was on the side burner. So it's actually building on my dissertation, which was published 15 years ago this summer about Latina leadership in the United States. And in my dissertation, I coined the term Marianismo. Most people know machismo when it comes to the Latino culture and the behavior of men, right? And even not Latinos will say machismo and machista, and they understand it. People don't know Marianismo, which is actually the definition and framework around the behavior of Latina women. And it was coined by a white woman in 1973, Evelyn Stevens, who was trying to help American society identify the behaviors of Latina women as we were gaining visibility and prominence in American society and figuring out, why do they do certain things? Well, their family is first. They put everything aside for others. They are sacrificial. And so the Maria piece comes from the Virgin Mary in the Catholic religion, which, traditionally has been widely practiced throughout the Latino culture. And it does define what we understand about the Virgin Mary. Even if you're not Catholic, if you just Google the Virgin Mary, sacrificial, righteous, above other beings, right? She was selected among women and, preferred, if you will. And so the pressure that comes with the behaviors associated with those expectations is our experience, right? And so the book was an opportunity to build on the research that I conducted through my doctoral efforts, which Latinas had the opportunity to share their leadership experience and said, we have to possess these 43 characteristics to be considered successful Latina leaders. Right? And I put that in quotes because I always say success is how you define it. Success is about you, right? Not everyone else's. So my success is different than Jackie's success. Now, we're both blessed to be authors, but our experience is different, and the way we go about it, and the path, and the purpose. And even when you are talking about the same topic, we present it differently. We reach different audiences, right? So there's a stress and a pressure that comes from Marianismo as a cultural expectation and nuance. And the modern Marianismo is in simple form. You choose what you want from the culture and you leave what you don't want. Si te gusta cocinar, then you cook away. If you don't, then don't cook, right? And really embrace the aspects that you believe are best for you. And the messaging in the book is related to the work that you and I and others are doing, which is having the freedom to choose, right? I choose how to define myself. I choose my path. That's not what we grew up hearing. That's still not what you hear for women, even in America. So because of the work that I did a decade and a half ago, over the last 15 years, I've been working, as you mentioned, leadership development, educational equity, DEI, and I've heard from women from different racial and ethnic backgrounds that have said to me, this relates to my experience as well in the Italian culture and the African American culture and other cultures. We just didn't have a name for it. So the book branches out where it's about women and women of color and Latinas. So there's something for everyone that needs to be able to identify what are the barriers that have held me back? What are the barriers that are telling me that I cannot be a Fortune 500 CEO and a good mother and a good partner and a good daughter, right? You can't be all the things 100% at once, but you can be all the things.
Right. And I know, and I love this conversation because you and I have had multiple conversations in relation to this. And I'm glad that you're actually giving us the definition of this new Marianismo, because I feel like I'm hoping that as we get, these younger generations to understand, like, okay, this is what happened to my parents, my grandparents, but I'm here to change it. I'm going to develop this new Marianismo and actually move forward and actually get all those 43 characteristics. Because, I mean, they're exhaustive, but they are necessary, I feel, for any success. And as you mentioned earlier, obviously it is subjective, it's not objective, right? Success is really how you think of it, because we are so different. Oh my God. Okay, so there's so much to unpack and unravel here, amiga. So when you were writing this book and you knew exactly, like, okay, from the Virgin Mary, yes, there's the grace and the love and the kindness and the charity and all those things, which is beautiful and amazing. But that has been also used. Some of those characteristics have been used as like a sword against us. And I'm glad that you're highlighting that, okay, it's okay, we could have those characteristics, but guess what? We have these other ones.
Yes.
In order for us to be successful in whatever endeavor we're in.
Yeah.
So, amiga, tell us, now with these 43 characteristics, what have you found in your own personal relationship that are like crucial, like you must have these top 10, if you will?
Yeah. So a couple of things. One, you're absolutely right that the characteristics associated with Marianismo and with Latinas have been weaponized against us, right? Because it's the way that someone holds you back when they say, well, you're supposed to be nice and you're supposed to be graceful and you're supposed to be, kind, right? But what I'm saying and what we're doing in our work is saying, well, I can also say shit and it can be in the name of my professional podcast because that's okay, right? And I can,
yes.
I mean, seriously, and I can also not be perfect and I can also be assertive and I can also get pissed off from time to time. And my personal, because you asked me about my experience, is when I get pissed off, I'm going to be assertive, I'm going to be professional, but I'm going to tell you what I have to tell you, whether you like it or not, right? And that's one of the things I love about you as well, because when we are able to be genuine, whether it's the norm or not, we're going to get our message across. When we sugarcoat things, I'm always one to say, I don't sugarcoat. We don't have time to sugarcoat. I live with a sense of urgency and purpose because people's lives depend on me being able to message their needs, me being able to advocate for what is going to make a positive difference in their lives, right? So you're absolutely right. The attainability of 43 characteristics is extremely exhausting. Like it's like, how in the world? So what I did in my dissertation was that I broke it down into categories, right? And I said, okay, we're going to look at how do these characteristics get grouped into categories so that it is attainable, so that depending on where you are in your leadership journey, in your life, in your career, you're able to say, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on. So I broke the 43 characteristics into 5 groups and put similar characteristics in. And those were high integrity, Marianismo, New Latina, transformational leader, and visionary. And the idea behind each one is, okay, right now, I really need to fine tune my skills as a visionary. And what are the characteristics that fall under there, right? And then maybe you get a promotion, the visionary actually helped you get there. And you'll say, okay, I want to make sure that I maintain high integrity, especially in an era where politics and corporations and money is corrupting people and quote unquote leaders, right? So I'm going to focus on this right now. It does not mean that you're going to be 100% in every single characteristic or every 5 of the 5 categories at once. It means that it gives you a pathway to be able to develop as a leader and as a person. A couple of things that came up because you asked about the characteristics and the attributes. So there were several things that I categorized, and there were over 350 women that participated in my study. And again, the book highlights some of this in the context of this new conversation. But there were 4 essential characteristics that came up, which were creative, good listener, passionate, and optimistic/positive. If you think about those, they do actually align with Marianismo, right? We're creative, we listen to other people, we're positive and optimistic, and we're passionate. When you think about how do we move in terms of Latina leadership, there were a couple of things that came up. The positive influences that Latinas who participated in this study highlighted And throughout the last 15 years, I've been bringing it up, and it has been validated. And I also conducted interviews that connected. But the 6 positive influencers were successful educational attainment, participating in leadership training, possessing self-confidence, having role models, religious influence, and family influence. Now, when you think about those related to Marianismo, some of them are deviating from the Marianismo framework, right? The possessing self-confidence, that's a bit pushback against you're supposed to be submissive, because self-confidence aligns with being assertive, being outspoken, right? Being able to say, like I now have been talking to people who struggle with this and say there's humble confidence, right? You can go between humility and confidence. When I show up, I know what I'm here to deliver. I know what I bring to the table. I know my expertise. I'm not going to let anybody make me back down on what I know that I'm here to deliver. That said, I'm willing to partner with you. I'm willing to listen to you. I'm willing to collaborate in different ways and be creative and negotiate. What is the best way to get people what they need, right? And the last one that I'll mention is the critical obstacles that emerged, which were lack of mentors, lack of opportunities. And I, in the book, build on that, talking about lack of opportunities created for us by those in power, which do not often look like us, right? The cultural obligations and the family obligations. And when you think about the two sides of it, family came up in both positive influences and the factors that hinder, right? Because that stems from Marianismo and the cultural nuance, right? So that then takes us into the part of the book that talks about the perfectionism and the imposter syndrome. Because what happens is when the negative aspect of the family obligation comes up, you didn't go to this event, you didn't follow through in what we expected, you didn't cook the meals from scratch. I mean, for goodness sake, I've had people ask me, you feed your kids Chef Boyardee? And yo digo, sí, a veces sí. Sometimes all 4 of us eat a can of Chef Boyardee. You take your pick, ravioli, spaghetti and meatballs, whatever you want. But if I was working all day and my husband was working all day and I didn't have time to make something, well, we've got to eat, right? I love spaghetti from scratch. Homemade spaghetti is my favorite. When I was pregnant with my twins, it was my go-to meal every day. Mm-hmm. But we don't always have time to make it. And there have been many times along my journey where I've fallen victim to the guilt and the stress and the weight of not meeting those expectations, right? So you have to constantly go back to, how can I do everything at once? Oh, I can't. How can I do what everybody expects from me? Oh, I can't, right? That's the perfectionism piece. And perfectionism is a tenet of white supremacy culture. There is an expectation that you and I are going to work harder because the system wasn't created for you and I. So we have to work harder. We have to put it. So you have to be, if say you are the chief operating officer in a company or organization, you have that big role. But they probably also expect you to plan the events, get the coffee because Latinos make coffee, make sure that you always look nice, that all of these things are in place. You say, what in the world? I'm exhausted. We don't realize that it's perfectionism. But as we're trying to meet all the expectations imposed by others, by society, by our culture, and even by ourselves, we are trying to be perfection, which we can't be. And then we end up in imposter syndrome. And, imposter syndrome has been widely touched on in recent years. I remember I had a Latina doctoral student who was writing her dissertation about it some years back, and she didn't complete that journey, but it wasn't talked about as much. Now it is. My lens on it is how it directly relates, how it connects to the cultural nuance, the gender expectation, the perfectionism, and lead you to a place that when you're not able to do all those things, you don't feel good about where you are. You don't accept the success you've had, right? So you may be successful in your podcast, you're an author, your career, you have accolades and awards and visibility, but you missed your kids' games, you maybe missed a birthday, and that guilt does not allow you to stand in the success of, I've done all these amazing things and I'm still a good mom and my kid knows that I love them, right? And I'm there for everything, just not these few events I've missed. And so you internalize that And then you go out there and you're saying to yourself, well, here I am speaking to 500 women and they all feel amazing and they think I'm amazing, but I'm really not because they don't know that I'm not a good mother, right?
Yeah.
They all,
Okay.
but like I see, they
Yeah.
all are dealing with
Yeah.
some of those same challenges. So they're just
Right.
amazed that you're there telling them things that relate to their experience, but you're beating
Right.
yourself up inside.
Yes, yes. I mean, thank you that you're talking about that because, yes, we're first of all, we're very hard on ourselves.
Yes,
And obviously now we have the theory behind why we are. It's all these nuances that we carry, whether it's in a professional setting or whether it's in a familiar setting. It doesn't matter. We carry them,
yes,
and that guilt and that shame. And then it doesn't help out when the family is guilting you and shaming you.
correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
you didn't cook? Well, let me tell you something. I don't cook. You know what I mean? I'm like, maybe I do breakfast, but that's just about it. I won't do the dinner, and I'm okay with it. But
Good.
everybody, my mom, if you ask my mom, ay, ¿qué le vas a dar a tu hija? Y
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh my God. And
Yeah.
this is like full on old school
Yes.
mentality.
Yes.
And it doesn't help or support us
No,
to
no.
shame us that way.
But still expect you to access higher education, be successful, get good grades, have a good earning pathway and career, right? So you just, I'm glad that you said you're okay with it because when we're not okay with it, we fall into it in addition to all of the other nuances and challenges. So what I try to do with the book is, as always, give a simplified version that you can wrap your head around. Y mira, you can go like this. I'm just going to choke you and just say, no, you don't get to hold on to me anymore. So I use this term that has only been used twice in history, and it's called the triumvirate. The triumvirate was used twice in history to identify each time a coalition between three powerful men that they made to stay in power. And how amazing that we have, and I gave myself the right and the freedom, that we have the right and the freedom to take a word that was used in that way that excluded women in Roman culture and history. I mean, you read about it and you'll see it excluded women and say, I'm going to reframe that word. That's the word that I'm going to use to name the connection and coalition of three ideologies that have hindered women, women of color, and especially Latinas from being able to be free and accept their success, right? So the triumvirate, it it feels so overwhelming, right? Even as we're going back and forth to talk about Marianismo and imposter syndrome and perfectionism, it's like, ay Dios mío, I can't wrap my head around it. But now when you call it, you say, este diantre de triumvirate, that is what's been holding me back. And knowing through reading the book that it's these three different ideologies that are like this, that one connects to the other, to the other, to the other. And that's why you couldn't figure it all out, because it's just all around you and it's different things coming at you at the same time, some by society, some by family, some by self. And you're being held down. And when you can't name it, when you can't identify it, when you can't define it, you can't work through it. The way that I wrote the book, and you know, because yours was out when I didn't read anybody's book for a year. It only took me some weeks to write the book because my husband kept saying, it's inside you. But it took me 18 months to actually get it out because of everything that I had. Because to be honest, when I lost the election, I went through all of these emotions and, I was down for a bit. There was shock. There was resentment. There was confusion. There was some anger. Like, how dare you come after somebody that's working their ass off to do what's right for people? How dare you play politics with people's lives? How right there. So there are all of these emotions that I had to go through in order to grow and in order to be, as you said in the beginning so beautifully, be redirected. And then be able to pour that into the book and say, this is how I give a voice. This is how I contribute. And being able to say, I'm experiencing this too, right? So I've had a lot of women, especially, but even some men reach out and say, I wouldn't imagine that you would experience these things. That's what I want to do now, is have conversations through podcasts, through events across the country, not just to sell books, but to host discussions with communities across the country. And I've had some conversations about international events as well. And now the book is coming out in Spanish in a couple of weeks, which was not in the original plan. But,
Nice.
right, as we talk about it, my husband was the first one, my publisher, people are saying, this has to be available in Spanish to be able to say to people, you can be a stay-at-home mom, you can be a CEO, puede ser abogada, puede ser maestra, and you're experiencing these, and break down the silos so that women are not feeling so alone. And you can say, you see me, you see Jackie Tapia, you see how amazing you think I am? Well, guess what? I don't cook dinner and I'm okay with it. I mean, that's huge, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah, I know.
huge.
I know. I mean, I get criticized so much for it, but I'm like, you know what? No. No. Like,
No.
why? I work just as hard as you do.
Yep. Yep. And
And
somebody else
and
can make dinner.
right. And that's why I'm making money so that I can afford
That's right.
Postmates, afford Postmates. I mean, I feel like hopefully as a society, as we have these younger generations, the Gen Zers, they now embrace modern Marianismo and learn that, from history, but don't repeat it.
Yeah. Yep.
Have the bravery to say no when no's are no's,
Yeah.
and not to feel shame for saying no, I can't make it to the baseball game today.
But
Because we
all of that
still
is
live with
easier
that
said
gift.
than done, Bella.
Yeah.
E-
Yeah.
Even for, I loved seeing you say, and in the last few minutes talk about it, right? And saying, I'm good with it. But if you think about the emotion, if you think about how long it took you, if you think about what you said, the bravery that it took you to be able to say that, and now in a very public space, right, that we're talking about this and sharing it, it's tough. It's not easy. And so for people that do not have the network that you and I have, right, that we've built because it has been our hard work, do not have maybe a loving partner, or loving to some extent, but not in the ways we have, that have a machismo, lens in their partner, and or Marianismo and machismo lens in their partner. It's very difficult, right? My husband will say, you need to stop cleaning the house and go write because you have books inside. I mean, he did. In order for me to finish this, he said to me, I need you to block off this week. We're going to go away. We're going to go somewhere to the beach. You're not going to clean. You're not going to cook. You're not going to manage anything, but you're going to write. That was really hard for me. I was like, no, I can't clear my schedule for a week. And he did allow me 3 meetings that were all school board meetings at the time because I was holding down that journey. And he said, but that's it. I got up in the morning. He goes, you can brush your teeth, wash your face, and go sit on the deck. And we rented a condo on the beach. And he would come out with coffee and he would come out with breakfast. And then when he saw me getting antsy, he'd come and chat with me and say, all right, pack up and let's go. And we'd go to the beach and I'd write on the beach. And then he'd see me getting antsy and he'd say, let's go to the pool. And at night, I would be able to take a break and go hang out with him and the boys and have an activity. But in that week, it just started pouring out because he was right. It is inside of us. There's so much inside of us, right? The other thing you touched on that is critical is the younger generation. If we had heard 20 years ago, if we had heard as 15-year-olds that we did not have to be perfect, that we had freedom of choice, right? All of these things that you and I are now embracing and saying to others, we would be in a different place, okay? Now we're in a great place. So imagine that. But what I'm doing is I'm writing a book for teens. And so the youngest person I know that has read my book so far is 12. It's a 12-year-old Latina. Her father is a single dad. He bought it for her and her college-age sister, which was beautiful. But I am writing a book for 8 to 14-year-olds, which my boys fall into that category that I want to use not just for girls, but also for boys. Because my boys have a mother and a father, and they live in a house in a gated community, and they have the money to go to scouts and karate and hockey and have season passes to the amusement park and do all of these things that I didn't have and didn't do because of financial challenges, right? I didn't get raised by my parents. I was raised by my grandparents. They have all of that, but they still deal with feeling like they have to be perfect. So now they don't deal with the Marianismo. So to your point, we've sort of taken that out of their equation because they see a mother and a father that are partners. You know, they see my husband encourage me. They'll see him take me shopping for an outfit before an event and iron my clothes and pack me up and get me ready, right? They travel with me for events and they'll see me get on a stage and they go with me. And that's different. That's very different. But now they still deal with the other two areas, right? And my son didn't accept the lead in a play in Cinderella this last middle school year in 8th grade because of different challenges he was dealing with around self-confidence and body image and developmental issues with his peers because of teasing. And his idea of who should be the prince in Cinderella, that prince doesn't look like me. I don't look like the prince. But he had the talent and he was offered not only that part, but any part. He chose to be the king. And that was with a lot of support and encouragement and push, to be honest, because he really wanted to be in the background. Some of that still stems from family conversations, from societal expectations, from cultural aspects, right? And then eventually, you know, in the next iteration, I'm going to write a book for little ones because my goal is to reach the different generations. And my overarching focus is breaking generational cycles of self-doubt because we pass it down sin darnos de cuenta.
Yeah, no, and talking about self-doubt, my understanding is that in order for us to break any, what you say, whatever, trauma or curse, whatnot, it's like 7 generations in front before you, and then you breaking for 7 generations after you.
Yeah.
This is wonderful, Doctor, that you're going to be writing these 2 books. Well, you already wrote the teen book, and you're going to write another book for the younger
little ones.
generations.
Yeah.
Yes, this is amazing. So, how can we get a hold of your book? How can we get this?
So definitely appreciate you and those that ordered in the pre-sale stage because we did pre-sale for a couple of months and that went really well. And now it's available on my website at drdamaryBonilla-Rodriguez.com. And the Spanish book is available for pre-sale now. And it's fun that my husband got involved. And so the team had designed a cover and I loved it. And my husband says, no, I want the cover to be opposite of this cover. I want it to be purple with the white face. And I was like, okay. And the team actually loved it. So we saved the other cover and we said, we'll use that for the teen book. And then also the book for teenagers will be available in a couple of months. We're just going to roll out the Spanish book first. But I would love to hear from anybody that wants to partner on an event and say, come to my community. Let's have this conversation. Let's bring people together from different backgrounds, different sectors, different ages, different stages of life to be able to have the conversation. And I'll say that I was very deliberate in the format for the book. Every page of text, as you know, has a photo accompanying it and they're side by side because this is so daunting that it is stressful to read about it. But when you look at the picture, and I selected each photo myself, it should trigger for you the reminder of what's on the page because the idea is to use this as a resource that you go back to. And people that have finished the book, several of them have said, I'm already on my 2nd or 3rd read because it's an easy read. And I did the same thing with my dissertation, Jackie. I wrote it in the 1st person instead of the 3rd person because for me, I conducted research. I do the work so that people have access, so that people are inspired, so that people feel empowered to use the information to push themselves to create the life that they know that they deserve, that they want, to be okay with that desire, right? Because I write about that too. It's like, you're not supposed to desire all these amazing things. How dare you say, I work to be able to earn the money to be able to pay someone else to cook? How dare you? Well, you did. That's your truth. Why do you have to be ashamed of that, right? So as we read on the pages of this book, but then other books as well, right, that are coming up by Latinas, as we listen to the podcast and hear dynamic Latinas and women saying, this is okay, I'm okay with this, then we start being able to say to ourselves too, well, you know what, I'm okay with it too. If Jackie don't make dinner, I don't do laundry. I take it to the cleaners. Yeah.
And I love when it comes out because it's all nicely folded and
Sí?
figures. Well, yes, we get to do all those things and more. Definitely.
Exactly.
Oh, amiga. So before I let you go, I always ask my guests if they could provide one or two gifts. So, I mean, gifts. Oh my God, look at me. One or two tips on how an amiga can handle her shit. What say you, amiga?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing I mentioned in the book is giving yourself grace. And in a sense, reframing the grace that's expected for everyone else and saying, I'm going to give myself the grace not to do every single thing. And Jackie, this is one that I am having to hold myself accountable to because I am damn hard on myself and allowing others. This is another one, allowing others to help you, right? Partnership is acceptable. It has to be acceptable, right? So for me, these two are going hand in hand. That as I allow others to help me, I'm giving myself the grace to accept help, to seek help, to be okay with it, and to let go of the guilt. Like today, I haven't been feeling well. I had procedures on Friday. I went to see family over the weekend. I overdid it, but my cup was full because I was with my loved ones. And, then last night I was laying around, I was crying because I was in some physical pain. And I woke up this morning, I didn't feel great, and I had back to backs today. And that's why when I came on and saw your smile, I was like, I love that I get to be with you, right? Because that's part of it. Building your network, the partnership piece, it comes, 100-fold to fill your cup. And I said to my husband, I took out some leftovers from the freezer and that's what we'll have for dinner. And I said, and I'm not going to do anything else today. And he said, oh, good. I'm glad you understand that you need a break. I mean,
Oh, so lovely to
think
have a
about that,
partner.
right?
Yeah, I know. And which is so different from the traditional Marianismo because
Exactly.
the men were sitting on the couch. They didn't do shit
Right.
back then.
And that was when my mother was alive. My mother died when I was 8, but I remember my mother taking my father's shoes off, taking his socks off, rubbing his feet, making dish. She made the best black beans, estilo puertorriqueño. We weren't Cuban,
Yeah.
but black beans are still my favorite. And actually, my husband's favorite and my boys because, it was a staple for my mom. But she died at age 27. So in her early 20s, her understanding of being a wife, a mother, a partner, a caregiver included that. Now, don't get me wrong. There are days that my husband is not feeling well physically. He does, physical labor. And I'm saying, honey, let me rub your shoulders or let me rub your arm and there are many days, more days that he does that for me. Because I say, oh my God, I'm exhausted. And he's like, let me rub your feet because you don't get off your feet. The honest truth is my husband hates to give massages. And I was saying, but you have big, strong hands. He goes, yeah, but it's not what I love to do. He will only do it. He will only do it if I'm in pain or exhausted as a gift to me, right? And this is what he says. He says, I pay somebody to do it for you. And I always have a go-to person. And right now I have, shout out to Sherry, but I have Sherry, at a local salon where I go and she puts her hands on me and she knows. She says, you're tense, you're stressed, let me help you. But part of his gift to me is if I know you're exhausted, if I know you're in pain, I'm going to do this for you. And I'm going to send you and pay for somebody to help you feel better physically because you do so much. That's partnership. That's grace. That's a gift that we give to ourselves, that we allow others to give to us, and that we give to each other, right? Whether it's your spouse, whether it's your sibling, whether it's, your business partner, your amiga. We create these communities, but oftentimes we're giving so much and taking on so much, and we can't. And like I say in the book, you have to be able to say the dirty word no.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. This is such music to my ears. I really, really honor you. And yes, I think that partnership is very important. Very important. And I know amigas out there who don't have partners. It's okay. See other people,
Yes.
For partnerships. It could be your friend. It could be your
Yes.
best friend. It could be your cousin. It could be a relative. It could be a stranger that you have a connection.
Yes.
But have someone on your team that sees you for who you are with all the perfections and the imperfections. It is so important. And I really do believe that one of the things that we get to allow not only grace for ourselves, but in giving ourselves grace, we also give it to other people.
That's
And so,
right.
amiga, Dr. Damary, I am so honored that you came here to share with us everything about your book. And I'm so excited that it's going to be in Spanish too. And
Thank
that
you.
is super important. I'm working on the Spanish as well for my book. But
Yay! Yes.
pero sí, de verdad, gracias, gracias. Thank you so much for being here on Amiga Hand Your Shit podcast, amiga.
Gracias a ti. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. All right. Assis, we're done. Let's see, he comes up. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you. You know, we could have gone
This is
on for a
amazing.
while. You and I can
No,
do
pues te
that.
digo, I know.